Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome back to my studio. Today we are going to paint a rose with granulated colors. It will be very loose, beautiful, and I hope you enjoy the process. I will use Schmincke granulated paints, Galaxy Rose and Forest Brown. To paint a rose, I would like to place the center of the rose in the intersection of thirds, somewhere around this area. Draw small little dot. To start with, I will take my smaller synthetic brush. I will dilute a little bit what I squeezed out of the tube, the paints, but still I will keep it pretty bold. I'm starting painting rose with small little strokes. I'm placing them in a little bit of C shapes, but I vary the pressure and the curviness, so it's not very C shapes, but some more like S shapes around. Very small little ones in the very beginning, but once I painted the center, I will start to dilute my brush strokes with another brush. I would recommend you to use two brushes. It's just a little bit more handy. No need for you to constantly wash out paints. So I will use bigger brush for making edge softer. I washed my brush, I dried it with a paper towel, and with damp brush I just go around the previous brush strokes and soften the edge just from one side, from, so to say, outside. Now I switch again, and now the more I move out of the rose center, the bigger I apply my brush strokes. I can apply more pressure on the body of the brush. Then I switch to my clean, damp brush and soften it. This softness, this extra water allows particles of the color just move in that direction. That creates nice graded wash. That's what we need for our beautiful petals, for rose beautiful petals. The more we go out of the rose center, the bigger are the strokes. And then I wash my brush, I dry it with a paper towel and soften a little bit. You can play around and try different amount of water. Granulated paints, they are beautiful because they create always some unexpected texture around, and it's just really fun to watch it. So just enjoy the process. And I think now we can switch to this bigger brush for making brush strokes. Actually, I start with the tip of the brush, apply some pressure and release the pressure, and use clean brush to soften the edges. I dilute a little bit more my paints, because once we move outside of the rose center, the fewer shades the flower has, so we don't need to paint in this bold mix. We just now can play a little bit more with watery strokes. Oops. Now I will use my smaller brush for painting some accents. Which means I will grab a little bit bolder mix and add a little bit of darker tones and details around. something, if you think something is too bold, you can always correct and dilute it with your clean and damp brush, like I'm doing right now. Now what I would like to do is to add greenery into the rolls, because this time we painting a lot of greenery. I have my green color, a very pleasant shade, a little bit sagey, and I start to add green petals in those places which are diluted, which have water in it. So I just overlap and paint some leaves. Actually, I would like to dilute it a little bit more to make it a little bit more watery. So I will use my damp brush just to loose it a little bit. How we paint rose petals, rose leaves. We do it in 2 brush strokes. We start with the tip of the brush, apply pressure on the belly of the brush, then release pressure. And then we do the second half of the petal in the same way, more pressure, less pressure. And then you can add some brush strokes around to imitate the texture. Now we need to work a little bit quicker because paints are getting dry, and my goal is to create as many nice bleeds as possible. Sometimes, because of the texture, sometimes my brush leaves these white spots, which I very much like. They give this very crispy sunshine feeling. So I really more into keeping them. Now let's add some move and direction to our composition. I will set up a branch which I will decorate with leaves, 1 brush stroke, another brush stroke. If something went wrong with your brush strokes, you can just correct, make it again. What you can do, you can wash your brush, dry it with a paper towel, and for example lift something. You can, let me show you once again, you can add different another color. Let's add our pink. I have another brush with pink already loaded, very convenient, and I just drop a little bit of pink, and with the tip of the brush I'm blending them. That creates very organic mix. Same here. Once you want to blend your colors, you work with clean and damp brush with the tip of the brush, and then your bleeds will be very, very lovely, soft. Usually underneath some bud there is more shade underneath, so I'm grabbing a little bit more bold color for those leaves. I can work either from that side or from outside back to the stem. I think I will just do it like this. Sometimes I like to work just with tip of the brush to add some move and direction. Let's paint one more, just with the body of the brush, and then I lifted the brush. Now here it's getting a little bit messy. I wash my brush, I dry it with a paper towel, and with the tip of the brush I walk around, do nice blends right here. I can add more contrast at this very moment. It would be very nice to add a little bit of darkness to these petals, to this petal area. If you combine painting with the tip of the brush and with the belly of the brush, you will create very nice different textures, brush strokes, shapes. Always keep an eye which areas of your painting are wet, which are getting dry. If some areas are still wet, it's a nice moment to add more leaves. I will drag out a little bit this pink color and add more of leaves on into that direction. This part is getting dry, so I probably finish it just with more dry brush strokes. And while this part is still wet, I want to use the moment to arrange my rose with some nice bleeds. Do them differently. Sometimes we can see just the tip of the leaf, sometimes we can see almost the big one, the whole one, or already on some stem. So just play around. If you see some puddles, there are two ways. You can either leave it and then it will create these blooms, or you can use your dry brush as a sponge and remove excess water. This will make bleeds a little bit more accurate, but that's all up to you. It depends on which style you prefer to paint, rather spontaneous, loose, when everything mixing up, or be a little bit more on precise. But I would like to add a few drops of pink. And in some parts I will distribute it, I will mix it, and sometimes I just leave it like this. I would like to add a little bit more of leaves in this area, just thinking how they will be better located. I paint in very light mix now. I will apply a little bit more of boldness later. Still, I'm keeping an eye what's dry, what's not dry. This part looks a little bit lost. I will add one more leaf here, mix it with pink. This mix creates very nice desaturated, difficult to tell actually the name of the color. I like it very much. I like to paint in desaturated colors, desaturated tones, more on a vintage style. And now let's think. I would like to make a little bit more crispy leaf here. Sometimes I just paint, I slide my whole brush with the body of the brush and then I lift it. That creates very unexpected, nice dynamic move, and that's what we need. I would like to add more softness. Just go with my damp brush around some areas, add more water around. That all creates the idea how this is our focal point, and all the rest, all the greenery is dissolving, dissolving into the air. It also allows us to create a nice amount of greenery around without going much into details. If we start to add details everywhere, we will lose the softness of our painting. Now let's add a few details. I will switch to my smaller brush and pink color. I will add few brush strokes just with the tip of the brush. maybe a little bit more of dark shades in the middle. If sometimes it's too harsh, just go around and soften it a little bit. Don't overdo it, otherwise it will be already more close to botanical illustration than to loose painting. And our goal is just to lose our hand and enjoy the process and explore the possibilities of color bleeds, which is very, very lovely experience. Now let's add few little details with a dry brush. I use almost dry brush now. I will slide on some petals just with a dry mix, mostly on the bottom, because sun shines from the top, which means bottom leaves are mostly covered with the shades. And I will add few details with the tip of the brush. This is a little bit too harsh line. I will soften it with the tip of my brush, with my damp brush, just like this. Already looks different, already looks nicer, like this. Some shades on this side, and a little bit here, still watery paper here, so our paints are bleeding, mixing very nicely. And you already can see in the spots which dried already, you see how beautiful dissolved all these granulated particles, all these colors. Now let's add just few details, shades on the leaves. Play around, don't overthink it. Just play around with brush strokes. So I'm not even paint a petal or a leaf. I just combine brush strokes in a way that they create something looking like a flower. As a last touch, I would like to add a little bit more depth in the bottom part of the rose, just about this, and few pink drops in these areas which are wet. And our rose is ready. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope you liked the process. And I'm looking forward to read your comments. What would you like to paint next? See you next time. Bye bye.